Welcome back to Ballboy Media. I'm LJ, and today we are going to be talking about the state of the Chicago Bulls. If you're new, please subscribe and leave a like, and comment down below one player you'd like to see be traded to the Bulls this trade deadline. So currently Chicago is 20 and 28, which is good for 10th in the Eastern Conference. They are tied with the 76ers for the final play-in spot, and these are two teams that are going in opposite directions. Obviously, the Sixers have had a tough season with the injuries to their stars, especially Joel Embiid, but they are trending in the right direction, although they still have a way to go. And the Bulls are trending downwards. They are 2-8 in their last 10, and 4 games behind a guaranteed playoff spot. The thing with the Bulls is they're not old, but they're not young either. So this is the Bulls salary cap table. As you can see, not a lot of allocations past to, next year and the year after. They are negative 27.7 million from a cap perspective this season, which in a league where everyone is under the cap, that's not that severe. And they're also likely to be about 20 million under the salary cap next season. That would be if they did not retain anyone who is on an expiring deal, and if Javon Carter accepted his player option. So as we saw, Jay Crowley Hoops on Twitter reported that the Chicago Bulls are open for business, and Modest Buzelis is the only untouchable player on the roster. So that leaves some questions as to who could be traded this season. In terms of my trade meter, I'd say it's plausible that Zach LaVine and Nikola Vucevic are entertained in trade packages. LaVine to me feels likely to be going to the Warriors should they want to add another piece around Stephen Curry. It was evident last night in a loss to the Suns that the Warriors are in trouble. They went 8-8 in January and are 24-24 overall. This team does not look like a title contender. However, I believe with the addition of Zach LaVine, they would look a lot better than they do now, especially if they're able to retain Andrew Wiggins and keep that line with Wiggins, Curry, LaVine, and Draymond Green. I think that is a good rotation, and they could potentially win a playoff series as an underdog. But for now, it's about getting into the playoffs, and right now they are outside of the playoff picture. They have some work to do, and I think Zach LaVine is a player that they could go after. Nikola Vucevic as well is an option that I like for them. 19.8 points, 10.3 rebounds this season. Vucevic is another proven veteran. I think he makes sense on a couple teams that are not Golden State, and I'm interested to see where he ends up. At the end of the day, I think both of these players will be dealt at the deadline this season. Now, what a trade with the Warriors would look like. The Bulls, due to their salary cap situation, they can take back 125% of outgoing salary in trades, so long as that trade does not take them over the first apron. Zach LaVine, as I said, makes $43 million, and Vucevic makes $20 million. The Bulls are $9.5 million under the first apron, so they have $9.5 million to work with. The Warriors have Andrew Wiggins at $26.2 million, Dennis Schroeder at $13 million, and Kyle Anderson at $8.7 million. And as well as that, they have a couple other guys to note. Gary Payton II is an expiring at $9.1 million. Kevon Looney is an expiring at $8 million, and Buddy Hield is on a multi-season deal at $8.7 million this year. When you do the math, there's different ways these can add up, but I think that it's very likely that the Warriors will look to add one or two of these Bulls players. Now, the Lonzo Ball question. We've all seen that Lonzo Ball is reportedly up for grabs, and the question is who's going to grab him. My question is who is going to grab him, because I'm not quite certain. I think Lonzo Ball, instead of being a trade target, is more of a primary buyout guy, where should him and the Bulls agree to a buyout, I think that he definitely would get scooped up by a team to play a bench role. He is due for $21.3 million this season, which is a lot, and that's the reason why I think he doesn't appear in a trade. But on that same token, I feel like it might be a deal where teams are getting rid of pieces on a multi-year deal for the financial freedom that an expiring free agent like Lonzo Ball gives them in the next off-season period. Marcus Smart is a good example of this. He's making $20.2 million, and he hasn't really been that effective with Memphis, unfortunately. The reason they brought him in is beyond basketball, but on the court, he hasn't been the same player we saw with the Celtics, and I think because of that and the nature of his multi-season deal, they might look to trade him for an expiring Alonzo and free up some flexibility next offseason, as they do look like a contender right now, and they have been as long as Ja Morant is healthy. Jakob Poeltl, again, this would be an interesting one, but I feel like Toronto might be in the market for Lonzo. in a deal for Jakob Poeltl. I don't think the Bulls would make this deal if they were to retain Vucevic, but Poeltl is, a solid center. He is probably among the top half of centers in the league. The problem is Toronto looks to be going a different direction. They don't really look like contenders right now. They don't, look like a playoff team. So maybe they want to get more flexibility, as I said, in the next offseason. And then Keldon Johnson's another guy I look at where, Lonzo Ball I think could actually make sense as a backup point guard in San Antonio. He is a proven facilitator, and we've seen him be a winning player when the Bulls were once the 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. Keldon Johnson is on a multi-year deal, and I think again with Lonzo, you're definitely going to get him at cheaper than $21.3 million. So I think if you're San Antonio, you might say, okay, maybe we'll make a deal and we'll send Johnson over there and we'll take Lonzo and we'll get that financial freedom in the next off-season period. Now, this is my dream deal on the market for the NBA trade deadline, and that is Patrick Williams to the Suns for Jusuf Nurkic. I think, what I've been saying to my friends and people I've been talking basketball with is that if the Bulls opt to commit to a rebuild, I believe this trade is in the best interest of both franchises. It seems as of right now that there's not a market for Jusuf Nurkic, but I think the Bulls would actually be a good spot for him if they committed to a full rebuild. Patrick Williams, they signed him to, I believe it was 5 years at an average value of $18 million a year. If they're rebuilding, I'm not quite certain that they'd want to retain that, and I think they could get an asset in return for Nurkic, who is on a cheaper deal. I think if you're the Bulls, you look to start building something and maybe contend again for a playoff spot in 2 or 3 years with Modest Buzelis as a focal point. And I believe that this is a good deal for both teams because I think that, the Phoenix Suns need steady players and they need stability around their core right now. And as we know, Williams' multi-season deal, I think it's 5 years, is a lot more valuable to Phoenix, I think, than to Chicago. Whereas Nurkic is only on a 2-year deal, so he will be a free agent after next summer, and I could see them even buying him out next summer. I think that Nurkic needs a change of scenery and maybe might establish himself as a valuable asset in Chicago and earn them some draft picks should they trade him next year. And on top of that, they might get one of the 3 first-round picks that the Suns acquired from the Jazz this year to take on his salary. In terms of other notes, I consider Coby White, Jalen Smith, Ayo Dosunmu, Josh Giddey, and Torrey Craig to be on the market. But I think some of these players, you might need to be blown away to make a deal. I think that, Coby White is definitely, you're going to have to pay 150 cents on the dollar if you want to acquire him, if you're a team that wants to acquire him. Josh Giddey, too, has been linked to the Spurs in some reports. Again, I don't really see it, but I could, see an overpay potentially from another team in order to get his services because he is a free agent this summer. And then Torrey Craig, a seasoned veteran, maybe a contending team like the Grizzlies looks to add him to the team. Thank you for tuning in today, and comment down below, who do you want to see in a Chicago uniform, or who do you want to see get moved at the trade deadline? We just saw a trade between the Clippers and Jazz that got Drew Eubanks to the Clippers. Let me know what you think, and thank you for watching.